Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the 34th Images Festival. My name is Samuel LaFrance, and I'm the Executive Director here at Images. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's conversation with the artists and programmers of Safekeeping, Vtape, and the artists whose works live in our care. We're really pleased to be joined by Kiera Boult and Dustin Lawrence, who organized this program and will be moderating today's discussion, along with artists Emelie Chhangur, Ming-Yuen S Ma, Jude Norris, David Findlay, and Nik Forrest, whose works are featured in this online program. The program can be viewed anytime until May 26th at imagesfestival.com and will be available from May 27th to June 9th at vtape.org. So welcome everyone, and thank you all again for being here. I'd like to begin by taking a moment to situate ourselves on the lands upon which we gather and organize. Images Festival is presented from the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is home to many Indigenous people. A land acknowledgement such as this one provides us with an opportunity to reflect on the lands and territories, ceded or unceded, that we work on or call home, as well as the original keepers who continue to steward these lands. Given that today's event is being broadcast online to viewers outside of Toronto, we invite you to take this moment to acknowledge this land with us and to reflect on the land upon which you find yourselves, as well as your relationship to it. And as part of this process of reflection and coming to awareness, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca, an online map of Indigenous lands around the world that aims to strengthen the spiritual bonds that people have with the land, its people, and its meaning. So when we started planning for this year's festival, we knew we wanted to once again collaborate with our colleagues at Vtape, who have been involved with and supporting Images since its inception over 30 years ago. As the program developed, we obviously got more and more excited about the opportunity to present these specific works, especially as the program's themes of care and trust between artists and archives became apparent. And today's talk kind of acts as essentially an extension of a conversation that Kiera and Dustin had back in March, an edited version of which is included in the program notes on our website and in our catalog. So I'm eager to get to it, but first I'd just like to thank everyone at Vtape, Lisa Steele, Kim Tomzak, Deirdre Logue, Wanda Vanderstoop, Chris Gaiman, and especially Kiera and Dustin for their support. And I'd now like to just take a minute to introduce the programmers of Safekeeping. Kiera Boult is an interdisciplinary artist, performer, and cultural worker from Hamilton, Ontario. In 2019, Kiera was the recipient of the Hamilton Emerging Visual Artist Award. Her work has been exhibited at the Art Gallery of Ontario, the Art Gallery of Hamilton, and Trinity Square Video. She holds a BFA in Criticism and Curatorial Practice from OCAD University and is currently Vtape's Submissions, Collections, and Outreach Coordinator. Dustin Lawrence is an Ojibwe of Saugeen First Nations raised off reserve in Ontario who graduated from the Toronto Film School in 2015. Later on, he worked for Big Soul Productions, Inc. on Derek Miller's The Guilt-Free Zone for APTN, on the CBC short doc, The Secret Path in the Classroom, and for APTN's docuseries, ASCII Boys. He has held full-time positions at the Imaginative Film and Media Arts Festival and is currently the Technical and Distribution Coordinator at Vtape. So I'll now pass things off to Kiera, Dustin, and the artists. Thank you all once again for being here. Thanks to our viewers for tuning in, and have a great discussion.
Thank you, Samuel.
Oh, I made the mistake of forgetting to unmute myself. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all of the artists for making time to chat with Dustin and I. Safekeeping, Vtape, and the artists whose work live in our care looks at how trust is inherited and how the negotiations we make in the name of trust. It is impossible to speak of inherited trust without acknowledging my position to this land as a settler, cisgendered woman, and Black biracial woman whose proximity to whiteness has allowed me to move through institutions with a level of ease. I am currently in my apartment in downtown Hamilton, Ontario, which is the ancestral homelands of the Anishinaabe nations, specifically the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, through Treaty 3, Between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, we also acknowledge the Haudenosaunee nations whose granted lands extend for six miles on both sides of the Grand River. As I returned to the city this summer, as I returned to the city of Hamilton this past summer, Hamilton saw the highest increases of rent in the country. The impacts of gentrification can be seen and felt in looking at the illegal development of 1492 Landback Lane, which Six Nation land defenders are mobilized still to stop the Mackenzie Meadow housing development project bordering the town of Caledonia. If you'd like to find out more information on how to support the land defenders, please visit their Facebook page, 1492 Landback Lane. I would also like to acknowledge that with the consultation, I would also like to acknowledge my land acknowledgement and the consultation from Alex Jacobs Bloom, who is a band member of the Lower Cayuga Nation of Six Nations of the Grand River Territory, and is a Euro-Canadian artist, curator, and consultant, and my best friend since high school. And if you would like to learn more about her, just Google Alex Jacobs Bloom, you can visit her website. In curating this exhibition, we look to examine trust. Working from our perspectives, Dustin and I, as the newest Vtape staff members who are inheriting the trust of the artists in distribution with Vtape, which is a little harrowing. We, in the selections that I made and Dustin made, we wanted to look at how trust can manifest and how trust can feel and how it can present as complex. I would like to introduce my selections of artists. Curator, writer, I'm going to introduce you all. If you want to give a little wave so people know who you are. And if I mispronounce your name, just feel free to interrupt and say, that's horribly wrong, Kiera Boult. We can hear it. We'll fix it. Sorry. All right. Curator, writer, and artist Emelie Chhangur is the newly appointed director and curator of the Agnes Etherington Art Centre in Kingston, Ontario. This appointment follows a significant career at the Art Gallery of York University, where she emerged as the leading voice of experimental curatorial practice in Canada, known for her process-based participatory curatorial practice. This commissioning of complex works across all media and the creation of long-term collaborative projects. Emelie Chhangur's Passing for White and Passing for Black in Sao Paulo, I felt this work captures the pain that we experience when somehow trust has failed or given away, and we must go inside our inwards to heal ourselves. Jude Norris, Bebonkwe, Winter, received the prestigious Chalmers Artist Fellowship and numerous arts awards. Her single channel videos have been screened at the Sundance Festival, the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. Her widely exhibited new media installations are in the collections of major museums. Bebonkwe's traditional tribal territory is and around Edmonton, Alberta. She is currently based in Brooklyn, New York, but like her ancestors, she considers herself largely nomadic. Jude Norris's Buffalo Skydive, I look to remind me that at times the repetition of resilience can present to be a little absurd, but in its repetition and its absurdity is significant. Shuli Chen, who can't be here, I would just like to acknowledge her absence and say a little bit about her work. Homecoming, Homecoming, which feels to me as a work that captures the anxiety of when we are forced to trust institutions, such as navigating the immigration process. And that is it for me. On to you, Dustin. Thank you for everyone's patience.
Thank you, Kiera. So I would like to start off by acknowledging where I am in Oshawa on the traditional territory of the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation that is covered by the Williams Treaties, which is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And looking at this exhibition, trust informs every aspect of our lives. To give or to accept trust isn't always easy. Upon your first interaction with someone or something, there's an inherent value that develops, and then further interactions with that will either bring that value up or down, building that trust up or depleting it. Selecting works for this exhibition was extremely overwhelming when you look at the number of works in the collection at Vtape. So when I had to pick works, I went back to works that originally struck me when I started working at Vtape. I thought of Sniff by Ming-Yuen S Ma and Gender Lace and Glass by David Findlay as they struck a chord within me that it was as if they were speaking to me or showing me something I had yet to discover. And then when I found My Heart the Rock Star by Nik Forrest, it was as if that inherent value of trust had been met and built upon in a previous life. It was like your video was speaking exactly to me in my youth, even though we have totally different backgrounds, and it was pretty a wild experience. Each of these works have stuck with me and continually build upon that trust value every time I view them. They speak to me in a way that's really difficult to articulate, but with full confidence I trust them. Just a little info on the artists that I selected. So David Findlay is a quiet Black thingmaker born in Southern Ontario, Canada, currently being loudly homesick as he moves from Southern California, where he's lived with one of his beloveds since 2011. David's thingmaking tends to focus on stories about desire, identity, and power. His approach strives to foreground embodied honesty, and his preferred tools of media are whatever permits the right combination of hands-on immediacy with fiddly pernickettiness. I love that word. His writing can be found in anthologies of smut, science fiction, and queer memoir. Most of his visuals are musical efforts that are still struggling to be born, which I feel is a chord that all artists share. You know, everything in our head is just struggling to come to life. Ming-Yuen S Ma is a media artist and professor of media studies at Pitzer College in LA. Was born in Buffalo and raised in Hong Kong. His experimental videos and installations have shown in national and international venues. He's worked with numerous arts organizations, including LACE, LA Free Waves, Mix NYC, Foundation of Art Resources, Inc., and the American Film Institute. And he co-directed with Carol Stekenes Resolution 3, Video Praxis in Global Spaces. And Nik Forrest is a visual and media artist living in Montreal, born in Edinburgh. Their practice includes video, drawing, installation, and sound art. They completed a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Saskatchewan and a master's degree in open media from Concordia University. They're currently working on an interdisciplinary research creation PhD at Concordia, exploring trans ecologies, sound, and listening practices. And that's my little intro.
The first question that we have for all of our fabulous artists is a question about how trust appears in your work. If you could let us know how the presence of trust or the absence of trust happens in your work. And if you would like to push back and say that it doesn't exist at all, we would also be willing to hear you out. We'll start with David Findlay.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to repeat what came through to me as.
Oh, you know what, David? I do have a bit of a Valley Girl affectation.
It was not your delivery. That was a technical issue, I think.
well, sometimes, you know, I can, anyways, the question was, how does the presence or the absence of trust occur in your work? And you are also welcome to push against that question if you would like.
I think there was an element in making that first piece that you folks have chosen, of leaping into the void and trusting that the new to me communities, queer communities, thing-making communities, school communities, had room for or could support dialogue that was nuanced, had room for or could support voices that were not representing the expected. And that leap has sustained me. I've been kind of soaring in my little chipmunk wings ever since. So the space created by Vtape, by Ontario College of Art and Design, by Images, by similar institutions in Toronto, including some really good schools that I encountered before OCAD, enabled that trust by modeling a wide range of backgrounds, cultural spaces, voices, etc. The trust in the making came from the tremendous, courageous steps I watched people ahead of me making. The trust was enabled by generosity and receptiveness of my peers and friends and educators. And also came from a certain amount of stubbornness. I think when you choose trust as, this is going to be more fun than anything else, that continues through what I'm trying to develop as sometimes the shortest path between idea for articulation and outcome is to, rather than overthink reception, rather than overthink all the possible horrible outcomes, to trust that somehow or other I will continue to stumble toward expression of some of the ideas. Somehow or other I'll succeed. I'll find my mark, find my voice, find my audience, or somebody will do the translating for me and make my inept attempts to communicate. They'll meet me halfway and listen. It always feels like a trust exercise, like falling backwards into the unknown. And so far it's worked, and it has been the shortest point. If that makes any sense at all.
No, it does. I think it does, and thank you. It made the word stubbornness. I realized that I probably should have used the word stubbornness when I was stubborn, when I was talking about Jude, your work in Buffalo Skydive, like the type of like stubbornness that occurs in resilience. Jude, would you care to answer next?
Absolutely. First, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I'm in Lenape, Muncie, Delaware territory here in Brooklyn. So I'm going to introduce myself in Lenape. Kawingana Walomwa, Nin Deshinzi Lowan, Ninaunji Yayi, Amiskwachi Waskaigan, Ninaunji Yayi, Lunapo King, Anushik. So trust, yeah. When you said that, I was like, wow, that's just, it seems like that's the underlying energy of being an artist. Like, even it so relates to what Dustin was saying about, you know, those creations. I feel like, you know, in recent years, I've refocused my practice mostly on painting, and it makes me particularly aware of, like, I feel like those paintings are knocking on me, like knocking on this door from the inside, like, you know, hurry up and let us out. And I feel like as an artist, that's pretty much the underlying factor of I know my own practice, and I know I'm not alone in this. It's just like living with this trust that that internal creative voice has value, because it is like what David said, you know, feels like sometimes you're just groping in the darkness. Not that darkness, you know, darkness is a great thing too. Like, I feel like those creative pieces, visions, voices come out of, you know, what they now call dark matter, right? But to live the crazy life that most artists live, it's like you have to have this huge trust, because it's like, why else why else would you do that, right? And I feel like, yeah, just having trust in the value of those things, you know, not from an egotistical point of view, but or position, but it just that those creations that we're gifted with having come through us, and I feel like they're a combination of, you know, what in my culture and many cultures we acknowledge as being like, you know, influence of the ancestors and the universe in combination with our individual selves. Like, to me, that's what my practice, that the physical manifestations or the real-time manifestations are. It's a combination of those things, and the value that that contributes to community or to other individuals, to ourselves. You know, a lot of the time I feel like I'm making work blind. It feels like even something other than me is going on a lot of the time. And I've often found that years later, after making a piece, it's only years later looking at it that I'll even realize what it is or what it's about or the teachings that are contained in it. So yeah, trust is huge and fundamental. And I also want to acknowledge Vtape. You know, Vtape's been my distributor for years. I feel so honored every time, each of the times that my pieces get chosen in situations like this, because I'm also aware of this incredible, vast wealth of work that's sitting in the Vtape archives. Kiera and Dustin, I love the title of this project, you know, Safekeeping. It's beautiful and funny and so relevant and loving. And I just have always found that the energy of just Vtape as a whole, as a community, I feel such trust in you. And it's interesting because it does seem to be a culture that just continues and continues over the years. And I actually feel fearful saying that, because it's so valuable as an artist to know that you're supported in that way. And you know, moving forward, I know that I will be making more real-time video, single channel and installational video works. And just even to have it's kind of like a subconscious knowing that when I make a piece and give it to Vtape for safekeeping, that it's going to mean that that creative process is going to be honored. Like, that actually impacts the creative process as well, I feel. And that's just actually becoming more to my awareness as we're speaking and as we're in this situation. So hi Chumagwich, Anushik for that, you guys. And yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. Pass it on.
That was really beautiful.
Yeah, that was,
thank you, Jude.
that was really beautiful. And like, I'm not gonna cry, like my first time being a grown-up.
I was crying.
I know I want. Well, I'm known for crying. Like in my Vtape interview to get the job, I cried. So
Awesome.
it's very on brand for me to cry.
That probably got you the job.
It did. It surely did. Thank you so much, Jude. Like what you described about this like internal force that's like driving you, but also kind of like the idea of like when you were talking about like being kind of like in darkness, it like visually made me think Emelie Chhangur, your piece, and I see like what's happening in your piece is like how we as artists like heal and have to self-pacify in sometimes in the practice of making, like the difficulties. So I will, Emelie, please, if you wouldn't mind answering the question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm speaking to you today from Cataraqui, which is the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. I feel very honored to also follow Jude, and because we are often found together in programs, and I always find it astonishing how much trust we can put into curators who put works side by side and create relationalities of trust between artists' work. So I think I want to comment on that aspect of trust. I think for me, trust is methodological. So in the works, I rarely edit. In fact, I don't think I've actually really ever edited. So they're like performances for the camera where I have to trust myself. And this video, very, very long time ago, is the third in a trilogy, one in which I drink piss, one in which I have sex in public, and then, you know, sort of have this moment of insane vulnerability as I confront my mixed raceness and my first time going to South America and being alone. So methodologically, the videos I'm making in these performances for the camera, always what's at stake is my own trust in myself and my ability to get through whatever that performative situation is before I can turn off the camera. But I also think, you know, the other side of trust is vulnerability. So often the works that I'm making are these moments of intense vulnerabilities where I am working through something in relationship to how I'm operating in the world. And I have to say, as because I'm like reflecting on also like my professional career as a curator, but now as a director, and thinking about the role art making has had as I've navigated white supremacist art institutional spaces and operated in them through trust building. So I'm looking back, you know, at this being included in this incredible program and being an artist right now, afforded me this opportunity to look back at this trilogy of videos and recognizing that they were happening right at the moment I was entering art institutions. And they are very much articulations of the vulnerability I felt in those spaces. And they're right before I decided that trust would be my curatorial practice. And that is right at the beginning of long-term socially engaged projects where I worked with folks for over a decade and continued to work with people in that way because I couldn't understand how trust couldn't be a part of the institutions of art. That's what I'll say about trust.
Thank you so much. I deeply admire you and your practice. When you like spoke to my class when I was a child at OCAD, it really informed, it informed the way that I like make art and social practice. So thank you so much. Ming-Yuen, would you like to go next?
Actually, Ming, it's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. And while I'm at it, I guess I should do another slight correction, which is my co-director for Resolutions 3. Carol's last name is Stakinas. So even though she's not here today, I feel obligated to.
Thank you for that correction. It's always appreciated.
Thank you. So I think I have sort of like a two-part answer to your question. And I think a lot of what I'm going to say, it's going to echo a lot of what Emelie just said, and also what Jude had said earlier. So, you know, definitely in terms of thinking about the institutions such as Vtape and their sort of long-term support for artists, I definitely I want to acknowledge that. For me, sort of part one of my answer is about the actual work that you guys selected, which I'm hearing, like Emelie's work, was made a long time ago. It's like I did some math. That's why I was kind of fussing around with my screen. It was like 23 years ago. So that's a pretty long time. And my second part will talk a little bit about like what I'm doing now, which is quite, I don't know, I was thinking like, oh, it's really different because mainly I'm writing now. So I haven't really made videos since 2007. But this work was made, I think, at a very different time, but again, sort of, I'm going to continue using this metaphor of echoing because, you know, it was really at the sort of the height of the AIDS pandemic, or the sort of previous, I mean, I know AIDS still exists today and people still get it, they get HIV, they still die of it. But it's a very different time. It was before the drug cocktails. It was a time when I was very involved in terms of, you know, being involved in AIDS activism. I was part of an artist community in which a lot of people are dying, right? So the work, really, it's kind of like a coda. So the work that you guys selected, Sniff, is really a coda of a much longer work, much more sort of expansive, much more, I guess, ambitious in a way, that called Slanted Vision, that Vtape also distributes. And both work kind of are explorations of queer Asian sexuality. And I made Sniff really after I made Slanted Vision, which is 50 minutes long, it's much longer. It also features collaborations with a lot of other queer Asian artists, writers, like, I'm trying to remember, like Dustin Chin, Hanong, people like that. So after I did finish that, I sort of decided I still needed to make a complement to it. And in a lot of ways, it's sort of like, they have a very sort of dialectical relationship, right? Because Sniff is very short, it's 5 minutes. It's very minimal. It's just basically me in this kind of formative situation. It's repeated. You know, there's kind of a looping structure in it. But I think sort of jumping ahead of that, I think thinking about it now, obviously we're in the middle of a global pandemic in which, you know, death is very much something that is, you know, at the forefront of a lot of people's experiences and a lot of people's thinking, right? Like their realities. But it's a different kind of pandemic, right? So I definitely sort of see echo in that. I definitely would concur with this idea that there's a certain degree of trust in an artist allowing the work to be shown, right? To sort of in a sort of to an audience in a public or semi-public sort of situation, especially in works like, from what I'm hearing, other works in this program, and certainly my work, I agree that there is a kind of vulnerability involved in such works. Although it's kind of interesting because this is like 23 years ago. It's my, I'm trying to do, not a math professor here, but you know, it's my like 20 something, 30 something body in this piece. I'm naked in the piece. So if you want to see what I looked like a long time ago, you go look at this program. So there's a kind of a remove to it, right? So I guess that I take that sort of vulnerability in context. But interestingly, I teach full-time now. I still very rarely, I would really think very carefully before I would, for example, show this work to my students today, for a lot of reasons, which if people are interested, I can talk about. So that's the first part of it. It's more specifically about the work. The second part of it is sort of like an update, right? So I sort of put the art making, video making part of my practice, part of what I do, consciously, sort of to the back burner. I probably will come back to it. So, you know, sort of echoing what you said, there are a lot of things I miss about, you know, being an artist and sort of having an active art practice. So I definitely think I will come back to it. And I sort of sneakily came back to it in a project that I'm doing now. But essentially, I'm writing now, and that kind of brings up different definitions of trust. So my last book, so a little bit of promo, I guess. This is my last book called There's No Soundtrack, Rethinking Art, Media, and the Audiovisual Contract. And it's really about the relationship between sound culture and experimental media art. So I'm still sort of drawing from my being a part of this artist community that I think Images Festival really represents in a sort of very important way. And also historically, I definitely, speaking of trust, I also remember that Images Festival is one of the early supporters of my work. So I definitely appreciate that and want to thank you for that. But, you know, I work with a lot of artists now. As a scholar, as an academic, I write about their work, I do interviews with them. So there's a certain degree of trust involved as well in that sense, right? So for example, because we're currently in a pandemic, right? My book came out last summer, so it's like during a pandemic. So, you know, you can't really do a book tour when, you know, you can't travel and you have to socially distant. So instead of doing that, what I did instead was it's sort of like a virtual book tour in a way, where I invited artists who are discussed in the book to, in a sense, sort of remix the book, right? So think about like kind of a sound metaphor. And it's really a very wide-ranging, they come with very wide-ranging approaches. It's all based on the reading of the book, right? Not necessarily about what I say about their work, but, you know, it's whatever they want. So that has now become this online, I don't know what you would call it. It's sort of like a cross between a podcast and a remix album, where each artist produced a remix, which is an original work based on their reading of the book. And then we have a conversation about it. So it's kind of similar to what we're doing here, but the result program remix is a sound, for the most part, a sound-based program. There's some audiovisual versions of it. And it's called This Is Not a Reading. It's on SoundCloud. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the incredible Nik Forrest, how does trust occur in your work or the absence of it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for including me in this program. I was very surprised and very happy, and I guess it's also you know, the work is from, you know, like it seems several of you from more than 20 years ago. Oh, I guess I should also just say that I'm talking to you today from Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, and this is unceded Indigenous land that's recognized as the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka. And when I'm hearing everyone, I guess I'm going to echo some of the things that have come up, because Vtape also has really been a very important kind of place for me, and thinking of how they seem to take on artists and take on works, it's sort of makes me think of this kind of relational way of understanding art, so that, you know, rather than just having these objects that are in a collection and just sit there, but there actually seems to be ways that you as curators and the other people at Vtape are kind of thinking of these as, yeah, I guess modes of relation more than just sort of discrete objects. And I guess when I think about My Heart the Rock Star, it was really, you know, really arose out of a community of artists, right? So for sure, a larger community that includes things like Vtape that, you know, kept the work alive and kept, you know, showing parts of that series. But the series itself was started by myself and Annie Martin, who's an artist who used to live in Toronto, and Nelson Hendricks, an artist who lives in Montreal. But it was kind of like a queer kinship model where if anybody, we didn't do a call for submissions, but if anybody wanted to make a tape and participate in the series, they were welcome to. And it kind of just sort of spread that way. And so it was really a kind of trust model where there was no sort of selecting or even inviting. I mean, it was just kind of moving along other types of communication, I guess. But also, yeah, the footage, you know, somebody gave me the footage that I work with in that video. That person is also from Toronto. She's no longer living, and she didn't live in Toronto for quite a while, so I don't know if anybody knew Amy Burt, but also a filmmaker and someone who worked a lot in the film industry. Anyway, she had this footage, and she gave it to me, and mostly because I had a projector. We looked at it and we were both very excited about it, and she just said, you know, take it, make something with it, which is also a huge kind of gift and like an act of trust, you know, to just see that there's something kind of lively about this film that we both were kind of enlivened by, I guess, and to allow me to just go and work with it. Yeah, and knowing that I would, you know, do this process of kind of decomposition with it, really to sort of see the spaces that were there and kind of continue to work with opening those spaces. So yeah, I mean, I guess for me, all of these things, the way that Vtape and Images and these communities of artists have really, yeah, kind of really been the thing that has enabled me to work and experiment and explore, and somehow the kind of themes or ideas that I'm trying to address in the work, partly about this kind of gender nonconformity and this kind of moment of realizing that that's not okay. I mean, in those days, it's quite a different conversation today, but sort of the space even for that kind of thinking and kind of that working through in the tape to happen, I think is also something that arises out of community. And when I think about my own sort of trajectory of how I think about gender, really, you know, I think that is also something that for me is really relational and sort of arises, yeah, in communities. So I guess that's what I would say for now.
Awesome. Dustin has one more question for everybody. I do just want to give everybody permission, though, if you have to leave, like now, that is also okay.
Yeah, there was a couple questions, but I feel like you've kind of touched on them, starting with Jude and Emelie. Yeah, one of them was, how do you see distribution as an extension of trust? And I feel that you all kind of touched on it a bit, like in talking through Vtape and that. So I'll just go ahead and ask, really simply, how did your work come into distribution 20 plus years ago? Did you seek Vtape out specifically, or did Vtape find you? Were you already a part of this community?
I'm happy to chime in, and
Okay.
I'm so happy to know it's not my internet because I also am having internet issues. So I'm always like, is it me that doesn't hear? Vtape found me and put me into distribution because Lisa Steele had put me into a program that screened in Montreal in the, I don't know, even like 2000 or something. And really, you know, by putting me into distribution at Vtape also created, you know, for me, the opportunity to continue to make videos. So it really was a practice. Distribution was a practice making situation for me. And I always felt, I mean, just to go back to trust too, because then they trust you to make a video every couple of years. And I'm like, you know, I'm sort of like not holding up my end of the relationship here. But they sought me out and it was very special. And also I have to say, it made the whole process of distribution very easy and accessible to me, and sort of a commitment, like this is a relationship commitment as I look back on it. And, you know, you make a video and there is a sort of open door to you that and a kind of unspoken trust that whatever you make will be welcomed into Vtape's collection. And yeah, so that's how I came to distribution. But I also wanted to have just one mini opportunity to talk about liveness and this idea of the collection at Vtape as being not objects, but living entities. And these sort of moments where we're brought together as artists distributed within Vtape makes this work alive again. Like it seeing this video of mine from so long ago, which I can barely watch myself, by the way. I can't watch my own video. You know, brought something out that was that is alive in me, but maybe I was forgetting. So I just wanted to like maybe add that to the concept of distribution, which is a constant reminder of ourselves and our living selves and our past selves that is kept alive through Vtape's distribution.
Yeah, and that kind of touches on another question that we definitely won't have time for, but it was just related to how do you see, how is it seeing the work now today, like as opposed to when you first brought it into Vtape X years ago? Jude, do you have anything on how your work came into distribution?
Yeah, actually, I was going to jump in, so that's perfect. Honestly, so this is a really early piece for me too. It's from the late 90s. Emelie, I also feel some difficulty in hearing my voice in this piece, but still can appreciate the piece. It was so long ago. I've been sitting here trying to remember, like, how did I get into distribution? I know that I was already part of the community of, you know, some of the people who were also working at Vtape. And I think it was another artist friend who suggested that I, you know, to show my work to Wanda. And she was really receptive. I had started making work really synchronistically, actually at the Western Front in Vancouver, you know, some years prior to that. But I really agree, and you know what Emelie was saying really resonates with me. I'm actually in the process right now of like revamping. I have two main websites, and one of them more houses my older work, including video installation and sculptural pieces, multimedia pieces. And through the process of, the process of going through literally every single one of my pieces that I'm still willing to present in public from so many years ago. And then also, yes, like a screening like this, where you look at older work and, see it through like more mature eyes, but also it takes you back to who you were as, as I say, when I was a baby artist. And that can be it's really enriching. It can help to sustain oneself, I think, to actually look back at your older work and go, see the beauty of it, the richness of it, or the things that you would change, or how you've grown, like all of those things, like similar to what Emelie was saying. And I just lost my train of thought because there was something else that related to that seemed relevant. It's gone. Yeah.
That happens to all of us. I know I lose my train of thought in the middle of talking about this right now. So
now's not the best moment, but yeah, that's what happens. If I remember, I might jump back in.
All right. Nik, do you have a little experience on when your work came into distribution and how you found Vtape or how they found you?
Yeah, well, I was still living in Saskatoon, and a group of us there had started a video, kind of an artist-run video collective, and that's like really a long time ago. I think we were using, like, no joke, a porta-pack. But some of us, we made some tapes and we kind of made a little like festival, which was really just one night and it was one program. And we invited Kim and Lisa to come. And they did. They came to Saskatoon and came to our festival and were so supportive and generous and funny and, like wanted to hang out with us. It was really amazing. And the tape that I made for that, which was my first video, it actually showed at Images, and yeah, they asked me if I wanted to distribute it with them. So they were very very open to coming to us and seeing what we were doing and really trying to support us and kind of bring us into more of a national conversation. So that's how it happened.
That's really great. That's great to hear the Kim and Lisa, like, you know what, yeah, let's go to Saskatoon and check out this festival. We got to get artists at Vtape. How are we going to do it?
I think it was at the library in Saskatoon, our screening, and I think there was some nudity in some of the videos, and there was like a bit of a local uproar. But
oh yeah, that's what'll catch the attention of Kim and Lisa, right? It's that local uproar, shaking the tree. Ming, do you have an experience or thoughts on when you brought your work to distribution and how you found Vtape or they found you?
I don't remember. So that's this short answer. I mean, I think it's very similar to a lot of you guys. Like Nik, I think it's probably, I mean, I was showing at a lot of festivals at the time. I mean, one thing I want to make a note of is that I also worked sort of in my previous like paid job. I also worked as a programmer mostly in the 1990s and early 2000s in media arts festivals and film festivals. And like, one thing that I'm very appreciative of is that I think if you want to call it, like my career as a media artist was really built on the support of film and media arts festivals. In particular, I would say what we today would call LGBTQ, at the time lesbian gay film festivals, and also Asian Pacific Islander film festivals. So there are networks of these, around the, well, actually internationally, right? But certainly in North America. So I suspect that might be how I ended up with Vtape. I honestly don't remember. I mean, I'm not Canadian, but I also have very strong ties as an artist to Canada. You know, I don't think Sniff was made there, but certainly Slanted Vision post-production was done in Vtape's sister organization in Vancouver, Video In, and Video Out also distributes my work. I have, you know, friends and colleagues, Richard Fong, Paul Wong, these are longtime friends and colleagues I still keep in touch with. So one thing that I do want to make a note of is I do think that for film festivals, like not images, but like film festivals that really identify themselves as film festivals, I feel like the experimental media program it's really non-existent now, right? A lot of that's moved into museums and art galleries, and that's actually part of what my research is about. But so for me today, I don't think I will find that same, you know, if you transpose the 20 years ago me to today, I don't think I would have been able to build the same career and also ended up being distributed by Vtape. So I do want to kind of raise that point, right? The sort of that is one of the big changes I did note in this sort of interim between when my work was picked up by Vtape and now. So
that's interesting to think about. It's like what's different in how your total career could be this way or that way based on, you know, that's a really interesting thought. I like the no, I lost my train of thought.
Also just one quick note also to add to, which is the festivals are, because they are time-based, right? You're all there at the same time. It's not like putting your stuff on YouTube or, you know, Vimeo, that you actually do meet people. And I think a big part of my community and my network and my connections are from those days. And that's very important to me, even though, you know, I have a different practice now, so.
That's what it comes back to, those relationships. I think Emelie mentioned it, and it's like when you bring your work into to images, to Vtape, to a film festival, you're starting this relation, you're building this trust. And I think for me and Kiera in this exhibition, it's kind of like we're stepping into this built relationship that is already held highly in regard, if that's the right way to say it. And we have to like come in and not drop it. We have to just keep it going. And it's really like I don't know how to describe it. I'm a loss for words at the moment, but it's like this. That's how I can describe it. But I think I'm not sure what our time situation is, but it's 2:06, so we've been going for an hour. If anyone has any last things they'd like to say before we close up, feel free. Jude?
Yeah, I also just wanted to also acknowledge Images Festival. And I talked about how supportive Vtape has been, but you know, that's kind of like on a more ongoing way because of the nature of the relationship. But you know, Images has just done such wonderful programming over the years, and I also had them commission a 1-minute piece some years back that has been, you know, widely screened, that wouldn't have even existed if it wasn't for them doing, it was like the 1-minute movie commission. I can't remember what year it was, you know, quite a number of years back, but yeah. So again, hi to Images Festival as well for, you know, making those platforms, screening platforms happen.
David, you are muted.
Oh, yeah. Unmute yourself, David. There you go.
There. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
To follow up on the comment about how physical presence introduced artists to each other who otherwise might not have connected, what the tremendous opportunity of screenings, of festivals, of archival efforts did socially, which is humbling and strengthening. I'd like to say thanks for the continuation of your support and for this opportunity again to there's a revitalization that happens when you experience other people's work from halfway across the continent, from across the world, that is housed in the same collection. And when you can see the parallels and the differences and hear the voices that you would otherwise not be exposed to. So thanks to you, the artists, and thanks to you, the artists who are also distributors. It's an honor.
Thank you, David, for being the artist. It's an honor to be able to have your work and to continue to, distribute it and do justice by it. If maybe not justice isn't the right word, but yeah.
I want to just talk a little bit about language, because I think it's very interesting. David mentioned Vtape houses this collection, and I can't help but think about families. And Dustin, what you said about like coming into Vtape and doing this is to be a part of a family. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that, but I just wanted to put house and family out there in the Zoom room to think about in relationship to everything that we've talked about.
Hello, siblings.
Yes, siblings. With that, shall we say goodbye? If we were together, we'd get to go to like one of those really great after parties that Images host, get a little drunk, and then show up to Kim and Lisa's in the morning for the omelet.
2022, Kiera, 2022.
I also think before we do that, I want to thank you, Kiera and Dustin, for putting this program together and also hosting this conversation. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
It's truly been an honor to be able to go back and look at all these works, and especially with Kiera being the two newest employees at Vtape who are on this journey together. This is perfect timing.
Yeah. All right, shall we say farewell? No, I don't want to
Thank
say
you again,
goodbye.
all.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Images, for having this awesome event for us.
See you soon, fam.
See you guys all
Bye.
soon. Bye.